we have now The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which was directed in 2011, written by Steve Zalen, based on the book by Stieg Larsson. The film stars Daniel Craig, Christopher Plummer, and Rooney Mara. The movie had a worldwide box office of $232 million and a budget of $90 million. Disgraced journalist Mikael Blomkvist is hired to investigate the 40-year-old unsolved murder of Harriet Vanger by her uncle Heinrich. Tattooed hacker Elizabeth Salander is hired to investigate Mr. Blomkvist and then eventually helps Mr. Blomkvist on a journey to uncover a secret history.
This is an unbelievable film, and I love the original Swedish trilogy, and I love the novels. And I think that Fincher elevated the story to new heights because of how good of a filmmaker he is. And this is a very dense movie. This movie has, I think, 5 acts in it, and there's a lot of story to be told. And so this film actually has like several films in it. It's even, if you think about it, Lisbeth and Mikael have their own little movies before they even meet in this film. And then there's another entirely independent kind of movie after the climax of this film. So this film is just very dense with material, and it's hard to believe that Fincher packed so much into this film.
Yeah, and Elizabeth Salander is one of the most interesting characters written in this 21st century, and she's a provocative character in the modern world. She's antisocial, she's bisexual, has bold piercings, tattoos, dresses in a very unique way, has basically a custom hairstyle. She's anti-conformity, anti-establishment. So she flips the archetype of like a Hollywood film hero or heroine on its head, and it succeeds so well. And she's also a genius. She has a photographic memory. She's an expert hacker, but she has a very dark past of emotional and physical trauma. And she unfortunately has minimal control of her life, and even her finances are controlled by social workers because she had been deemed unfit to live her life without supervision.
David Fincher reveals her in such a brilliant way. And I'm nothing against the original Swedish movie, but the way that director revealed Lisbeth is the two men in the company walk into the meeting room, and she's then waiting for them. And it's the older man is obviously surprised by how she looks, and then that's it. But with this film, David Fincher is such a great filmmaker, and he understands tension and how to build tension. And for example, he slowly reveals Lisbeth in a really unique way where first her superior is speaking with the businessman who wants to hire her, and he's describing Lisbeth and saying how people don't like her. She's very strange. She's very different. She's brilliant, but she's very unique. And then while this is happening, Fincher is watching Lisbeth arrive on site on a motorcycle, and then it cuts to her in the elevator going up the floors, but the camera stays behind her, so we don't even know what her face looks like yet. But we can see a little bit of the hair, we can see the earrings, so we can see that her look is a little strange. And then next he shows her walking through the offices, and we're still behind her. The camera's following behind her, and rather than seeing Lisbeth, we're still seeing the back of her head, but instead we're seeing the reactions of all the other people in the office as they see her and are shocked by her appearance. And then her body language is, her head's down, she's hunched over, and she's moving as quickly as she can through the office, and she opens the doors quickly. And then he finally shows Elizabeth's face when she enters that room. And Fincher built up this anticipation to the final reveal of Lisbeth, which is such a brilliant directorial decision of how to show this iconic character for the first time.
This series of books is called the Millennium Saga. It's a trilogy of books written by Stieg Larsson, who he actually died before these were ever published, and he had submitted them to a publisher in 2004 after writing the first 3 novels, and he actually had 10 that he planned on doing, but he suffered a sudden heart attack at age 50 years old when he was climbing up the 197 stairs to the apartment that he shared with his partner of 32 years. And it's unfortunate what happened to him. He never got to see his novels published.
It's an ironic tragedy right there.
Turned into books.
Because this became such a sensation around the world.
Yeah, but his partner and his family had the books made, and I think they've even tried to make a 4th version of the series. But this is an incredibly successful book series. It took Europe by storm, then it came to America and took this country by storm. And there are a lot of themes in these stories that are relevant to today's society, specifically equality, injustice, abuse, discrimination, because
privacy.
Yeah, privacy, and because Elizabeth has been has spent her entire life basically being attacked and demeaned, and because she's different and she's had a horrible past. And also the themes of the press and media and what that can do to a society and to people, and how it's affected the character Michael Blomkvist's career, and how he's basically forced into retirement.
Yeah, what happens is Mikael, he loses a libel suit against the businessman, the business heavyweight Weinerstrom, and he's destroyed by the media and the press, and he has to forfeit his stake in the Millennium Company. And his character gets to the point where he just wants to hide and leave and just like hide under a rock. But then this leads to him meeting with Wenger, who offers him a job. And the job would be to investigate the mysterious disappearance of his niece, Harriet. And in return, Wenger would help him destroy Weinerstrom.
But also, he's not supposed to be doing it so that anyone else in the family knows what he's doing. So it's under the false pretenses that he's writing a book about the family. This gives him access to the Wenger family, and he gets to interview each of the family members, the brothers and sisters. And so he gives him complete access to the family. He's living on their island while he's supposedly writing this book.
Yeah, and so Mikael is trying to find clues, and his main goal is to find something that the investigators of the disappearance couldn't find. And then that reaches pretty much the end of that initial first story from Mikael. And then while this is happening, we finish up Lisbeth's story, and her first story is the situation with her new guardian. Her original guardian passed away, and so she's been stuck with this new guardian, Bierman, who ends up being a monstrous person, who sexually abuses her in exchange for giving her her own money. And Lisbeth has lost power in her life. She can't go anywhere, do anything, or use or take money from her bank accounts without permission from this guardian. And so she devises a way to gain her power back, and it ends up being both the most intense but also gratifying scenes of the movie.
Yeah, Salander occupies the role of both a victim and a survivor in that first act of her story, and fortunately escapes that brutality and oppression and turns the tables on that guy, and he gets basically everything that he deserved with the tattoo on his chest
that says I'm a sadist and a rapist,
and also what she does to him with the I'm not going to say it on camera and on audio, but this gives her power back in her life, and she eventually gets also hired to work with Blomkvist on the supposed book, but the investigation.
And the reason why Mikael hires her is because he learns that she put together this investigatory package for her boss, and Mikael discovers that Lisbeth found out things about him that nobody else could have found out. It's impossible that she found this out, so he realizes, I need this person to help me out with this job.
Yeah, in a way, Lisbeth is kind of like a superhero. She has like superhuman abilities, like her photographic memory, as well as her hacking skills, put her in this elite position to be able to, find out any kind of information she can get that she needs. But her weakness, and probably her only weakness, is her past, which has formulated a lot of her emotional issues in her life. And these memories of her past abuse are kind of like her kryptonite.
And it's also an explanation for her appearance. They don't really go much into detail in the movie, but in the novel, it's explained that Lisbeth puts on this appearance of the gothic looks, the crazy hair, the piercings, the all black, and she puts on this abnormal appearance because it's a way to keep people away from her, because she's kind of afraid of all people and she doesn't want to interact or connect with anyone because of her traumatic past. And so the best way of avoiding people is to make them want to avoid you.
And we get surprisingly great chemistry between Blomkvist and Lisbeth Salander, who you think would never be able to work together because they're polar opposites, but they do work very well together, and they eventually form an intimate relationship while they're investigating this disappearance. And this film has an incredible twist ending where they're investigating the family, and they're also at the same time seem to be getting hunted by the person who committed this act is onto them, because the person leaves a dead cat outside the door, and they also chase Blomkvist with a rifle shooting at him. So,
and the biggest clue that Blomkvist found is that through looking through photographs of the parade the day Harriet disappeared, he discovers several photographs And if he put them in his computer as a slideshow, and then he found out that her face and the photograph changed from enjoying the parade to seeing something that brought about great fear in her face. And then she left the scene, and that was the last time she was ever seen again. And so that gives Blomkvist the idea that a person was there, and this person is the reason why she disappeared. He doesn't know how, but there's someone there who terrified her so much.
And, Fincher does a great job, and so doesn't the writers, to, keep you on the edge of your seat. Like, who could it be? Is it someone in the family? Is it an outsider? Is it even Heinrich himself? Did he do it? But what we find out later on, this is obviously a big spoiler, is that it's actually Martin, played by Stellan Skarsgård, who seems like the most normal of everyone in the family. And he does a phenomenal job putting on the show that he's not actually a serial rapist and serial killer.
Yeah, he has a partner. He seems to be very charming, and he seems like a kind and decent man. He's now running the company as the head of the company, and he's also Harriet's brother.
There's this great scene where Martin and Mikhail are talking in Martin's home, and they're just talking in the middle of the scene. All of a sudden, there's like this loud scream or something, and Martin replies...
It sounds kind of like wind.
Yeah, it sounds kind of like wind, but it could sound like screaming, or it's like muffled screaming. And he goes, "Oh, must have left the windows open." And we don't realize that it's because he's got a woman in the basement, which he talks about later on.
Yeah, they're just drinking wine with his partner, and the woman he's partners with has been dating him for a long time, and she is totally unawares of who he really is. And this leads to, while Lisbeth is investigating in the next town over, Mikhail becomes suspicious of Martin and goes to his house and breaks into his home and starts looking for any kind of clues that could help him out. And then Martin arrives home, and so Mikhail has to get out of there. And there's this great scene where Mikhail escapes the house, and he's in the backyard, and he's moving down through the woods, and then he makes a really loud sound by stepping on a branch, and he falls over, and then this helps Martin discover him. And so Martin finds him in the yard, and he's very polite and nice and charming, and he's like, "Come on in for a drink." And it's this great moment where Mikhail knows there's something really wrong about Martin, but he still goes inside for a drink out of politeness. And then we discover Martin really is the killer when he pulls a gun out and leads Mikhail into the basement.
And he even talks about that. Like, Martin talks about how it's like, you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, even though you feel in danger, which is an explanation of how he lures a woman into his life to be able to capture them. He kind of makes fun of Blomkvist for falling into this trap where he's like, you knew something was wrong, you suspected me, but you still came into the house.
Yeah, he says that the fear of offending is more powerful than the fear of death. And so you're right. He makes fun of him, and it's actually true. People, we talked about it before, people can sometimes be unnecessarily nice in circumstances when they shouldn't be nice and polite. And it's a really disturbing scene when we see what Martin's kill room is like, and it's so well engineered and designed that it's just terrifying, because you can only imagine how many people has this guy killed, because he seems to have it down to a T. It's impossible to ever catch this guy. The way he has this room set up, and then he has that incredible moment where he hangs Mikhail up by rope, and then he wraps a bag over his head and suffocates him playfully. And the scene, they actually did tie bags over Daniel Craig's face and head and suffocated him over and over in scenes. And one take went so long that Daniel Craig actually passed out from the lack of oxygen, and they had to literally save him. And then I think David Fincher, that they let him go home early because of it.
That's what happens when you work on a Fincher film.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Lisbeth Salander, she had been figuring out in a different way that it was Martin, following other tracks, and she comes to the rescue and saves Mikhail Blomkvist's life. And then we have that badass chase scene where she smashes him in the face with a golf club, and then his face is all messed up, but then he's driving away, and then she chases him on the bike, and then, his car flips over, and then she watches him burn alive and blow up in the gas station, and it's so cool. And then we get the great shot that Fincher does of the gun with her pants in the fire in the background, which was like used on posters and stuff. So it's a great image.
Yeah, most of that scene is CGI, and especially the scene with Lisbeth and the gun that's actually shot in front of a green screen. But I love how the explosion didn't kill Martin, and you can hear him screaming in agony from the pain of the burning alive, and I think that's what he deserves, that kind of pain.
Forever.
Yeah. But then this film, this is not the end of the film by a long shot, because after this, Lisbeth sets about her own scheme where she ends up hacking into Weinerstrom's bank accounts, and she transfers $3 billion of his money into her own private account. And this is a way of her not just getting back at someone who deserved it and a criminal, but also helping out her new friend, Mikhail, who she's developed feelings for. And she develops even more feelings because one of the most important moments in the film for Lisbeth is after the climax, they have coffee together, and Lisbeth asks him for $50,000, and she can't tell him why she needs it, but she just needs it. And Mikhail says without hesitation, "Yeah, sure, no problem." And it's the first time anyone's ever trusted her that much in her life.
And also, at the same time, Mikhail, he solves the case of Harriet for Heinrich and reveals and figures out that Harriet never died. She escaped that island. She escaped her brother Martin and has been living that life of somebody else. And he reunites the two together, and she finally comes home to Heinrich.
And ironically, she's been sending him the flowers every year as a way to show her that she's still alive, and he misunderstood it.
Yeah, he thought that it was the killer taunting him.
Yeah, so it's a minor misunderstanding.
But this is such a good movie, and the Swedish versions are great. They made all three of those with Noomi Rapace, who actually has had a great career in Hollywood too, and she was even in Prometheus, and so she's a great actress. And they asked her to be in this, or a lot of people wanted her to be in this, but she turned it down, which I think was a wise decision because it wouldn't have felt right to be the same character in a different franchise of artistic direction.
Yeah, exactly, and I'm sure she was done with playing that role after doing 3 films as one character.
Yeah, and then Claire Foy got a shot at it this past year, and I haven't seen the film, but it's supposed to be really good. And I mean, she's such a phenomenal actress.
Yeah, she's great. And I'm so disappointed that this film didn't find success because it canceled their plans of the trilogy with David Fincher directing. And that was the main reason for him signing on to this film, was because he had grown tired of all these superhero movies where they always play it safe. It's always the same movie over and over again, same storyline, same 3-act structure. And he was extremely enticed by this film because it offered him the opportunity to make an adult franchise of movies in which he could make it hard R and create intense stories and dark themes for a franchise.
It still made a good amount of profit, so I'm surprised they didn't go through with it. I mean, it
wasn't enough.
$230 on 90, so that's
no. But with a production like that, you get to factor in they spent $40 million at least on marketing.
True.
And then when a movie comes out, you can't take the box office as straight money going to the studio. For the first 2 or 3 weekends, the studio splits money with the theaters 70-30, so the theaters get 30% and the studios get 70%, which is why studios want movies to make so much money on opening weekends. And then after the second or third weekend, the balance goes back to 50-50 and then even 40-60, so the theaters end up getting more percentage of the movie's grosses as the weeks carry on. And so you got to think about a box office, you got to kind of split it in half pretty much. So the movie really made for the studio $110 million on a budget and marketing budget totaling $150 million. So it was actually a loss.